Hey guys, so we have entered into the last stage of our bootcamp. Okay, so in this video, we are going to learn about creating the entire Facebook clone using whatever knowledge that we have gained in the past 7 days. Also, you guys who are new to this particular channel or new to this particular video itself, the prerequisite for this project is a basic knowledge in HTML and CSS. That is what we are going to use in this video to create the Facebook clone. So it won't be hard. It would be an easy project. Okay, so you don't have to worry about it. If you still aren't very familiar with HTML and CSS, you can go back through our playlist of 7 days Facebook clone, where we have taught the HTML and CSS portion in depth for you guys. Okay, so that too would be down in the description of the video. You can take a reference from there, learn from there, and come back to this video, create this entire project using this video and put it up on your resumes. So that would be your focus. Again, shout out to Swastika for creating this project for us. She has been a huge help to me in this entire bootcamp. So thank you so much. I hope that it would be easy for you. If you have any doubts, any concerns while going through the video, put it down in the comment section and there will be someone from DevTown who will be able to address them. Also, as far as the project submission goes, so upload your project, whatever you have done, the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files. If you are doing it on your local workstations, upload it to maybe a Google Drive, create the access to a public access, as well as then submit the link in the Google form down below. The second category of people who are working on Code Sandbox can directly copy their link, that is, share their sandbox in the project submission form down below. The third category of people who are using some other tools can upload their code base to GitHub and submit the link for their repository down below. All the different things that we have learned in the past 7 days are going to be utilized while creating this project, as well as some other things as well that you will be learning throughout the project itself. I hope that you guys will be able to complete the project on time. We are giving you guys 1 week to complete the entire project. The video will be here on YouTube. Then we'll be closing down the form, the project submission form down below. It will take us another 1 week to 2 weeks to send out the certificates to the registered email address that you have been putting up on your attendance links, as well as the correct project submission form as well. Once everything has been verified, the certificates will be sent to you accordingly. I hope that you guys will be enjoying this entire video as well as learning something from it. So thank you so much for the same. Let's continue in our future boot camps as well.
Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to be creating a clone of the Facebook login page using HTML and CSS. So firstly, let's get to looking at what the Facebook login page looks like and what we'll be creating at the end of this project. So this is the actual Facebook login page, and this right here is what we are going to be creating. So let's move forward with the HTML code. I'll put the boilerplate here and then I'll change the title to what it looks like in the actual Facebook page, Facebook login or sign up. Next up, we'll be linking our style sheet here, for which we are going to be using our CSS. So href style.css. Also here, as you can look that we have this logo right here on the tab itself. So this picture can be downloaded from anywhere on the internet, and I have kept it in an image folder here. This is the logo that we are using. So I'll also link that here using the same attribute, that is link, but instead of style sheet here, I will just put icon. And I will give the location of the image, that is images/logo. So now if you open this, you can see that we have got this title right over here, Facebook login or sign up, and we have also got this logo. Moving forward to the body, we'll create divs inside this for these containers. We'll create different containers and we'll create the divisions for putting these items inside that. Create div here and I'll give this an ID of container. So inside the first container, what we are going to be having is these things. We are going to be having the Facebook logo, the recent logins, click your picture or add an account, and these two pictures right over here, which will go to an account if you click on this, and this will be for adding another account. So inside this div, let's just create another div, which we will give an ID as recent logins. After this, for putting the logo right here, we can take this picture from the internet also and we'll put the logo here using the image tag. We'll give this an ID here as Facebook and alt as Facebook logo. Now, since I want to get this logo right over here as it exactly is, I'll just go to the original Facebook login page and I'll use the inspect command here. I'll click on this and you can see that the source is here, this link right over here. If you just copy paste this link, you can use this logo from the Facebook page itself. So I'll just copy paste this link in the source. Now let's see. Yes, we have got this logo right over here. Although it is a bit out of proportion, but we will be doing it later when we get to the styling part. For now, let's just add all the elements that are present over here and then we'll style it accordingly how it looks like. Now, after the logo, we have the recent logins and this sentence right over here. So let's create a div for that. I'll give this div an ID as title and I'll write recent logins. For this, we'll create another div which will give the ID as, let's say, subtitle. We'll write the sentence here which was written below the recent logins part. Take your picture on add an account. Alright, so this is done. Now the next thing that we have over here are these two pictures, these two attributes right over here, which is used for the profile. So let's create another div here and I'll give this div an ID of cards. We'll place both the cards inside these. We'll place both these inside this. We'll name this as card 1 and we'll name this as card 2. So inside this div, let's create another which will give an ID as card 1. Now, as you can see right here that there is this little X, little cancel button right over here that we are supposed to put above this picture. So we create another div inside this where I'll give the ID as cancel. And I'll place a small X over here so that we get this thing. So yes, we have this X over here, although we still need to style it. We'll get that too. After this, we need the image tag for putting the image that we have inside the card. So let's give this image an ID as card1 image. And I have downloaded this image, although you can take any image that you like to put. And I'll put the alt as profile picture. We also have a name below it. So we'll give this name a class and not an ID because an ID is unique, whereas a class can be used for styling multiple elements at the same time. And we'll be needing for both the cards that we are making. So let's just give this a class named username and we had this name as Glenn over here. So yes, see, we got this image and we got the name right over here, and we also got this cancel sign that we'll be putting on top of this image that will look something like this. That was the first card. Now let's create the second card, which we are going to be calling as card 2. We'll add similar procedure here. We'll add the image for the second card and we'll give this the ID as card 2 image, and alt as add account. So you can see that this right over here is this image that we have here, and we need to write the text below this. So this a div ID as add account, and we'll keep the class same as we did for the first card. So we'll keep this as username as well. Now class can be common to many attributes, whereas ID can just be unique. ID cannot be common to different attributes for styling the same thing. Right, add account here. So that is it, that we have covered all the things that we had in the first part, that is the Facebook logo, the recent logins, and this sentence right over here, and all the both these cards that contain the account picture and add an account attribute. So we have got all this. Now moving forward, we'll be creating this login box right over here. So for that, we need to get out of the container that contained all these things right over here. We have to make another container that will have a different div. So we got out of this recent logins container, and we will move forward to creating another div which will give an ID of login. Inside this, we'll have different tags for creating all these things, such as the email address, the password, the login button, and the create new account button. So let's get on to that. Firstly, for creating the email input type, we will put input here as, let's say, email, and we'll add a placeholder here in which we will write email or phone number. Now, placeholder acts as a temporary text which will show up until and unless there is some input given in the field. For example, this, as you can see right here, that this email or phone number will show up as a temporary text until and unless that we have typed something here. Second is the password. So we'll change the type here as password, which will work as hiding the text that is typed in that field, and we'll also give the placeholder here as password. Now next up we have the login button. So for that we'll give the input type as button, and we don't need the name here. So we'll add a value instead, which will say login, and an ID that is the login button. So let's see. We've got this login button, password, and email fields right over here correctly. Next up is the forgot password tag. So for that, we are going to be using the anchor tag, that is the A tag. And in href, we'll just put a hash here. Hash basically means that the link won't direct you to anywhere. It won't take you to any other site. It will just be on the same site that we are working upon. Right, forgot password. And as you can see here, that this link is right over here. Now when you click on it, it doesn't redirect you to anywhere. It just it stays on the same page, and it does not have any functionalities as of now. We'll do a bit of an inline styling here. I'll take the HR tag, which is just a tag that is used for a thematic break. That means it is a separation between two sections, creating a line. I'll show how it happens. We'll style it as width would be 95%. 95% of the page. So as you can see here, there's this thin line, very thin line that is placed right over here. And this line is not covering the entire page. It is just 95% of this page. This page right over here, it's just covering 95% of that. Now we have the create new account button right over here. So we'll again put an input tab and put this to button. Give this a value as create new account and also an ID with the same name, create new account. Next up, we'll use just a paragraph tag for writing the text that is below this. Create a page for a celebrity brand or business. So let's just copy paste this text from here and we will paste this text here. However, when you see this right now, this is a simple plain text, whereas here in the original page, this create a page, these three words are in bold. These three words are in bold, whereas the other words are just plain. So for that, we'll put a strong tag here, and inside the strong tag, I'm going to be putting this sentence, create a page. So now when you see, this has come in bold just as it is right over here. So that was all that we needed in the body part of this. We are just left with this footer over here. We have added all these elements. We have added the login button, these text over here, these cards that have the pictures and the email address and the password inputs, the login button and the forgot password, create new account, all these text over here. Now all we are left with is the footer. So we'll get out of this div that was initially the div ID with the name container, and we'll write the footer tag here. Inside the footer, I'll create a div. Now I'm gonna copy pasting this content over here because it's not really possible to write these languages through the keyboard. So I'll just have to copy paste it over from the Facebook site. And I have added some attributes here of break tags, such as break tags and some inline styling using the HR tab, which is a separation between two sections. So now as you can see that we have this footer right over here. We basically have all the elements that we need in the HTML part of the code. Now let's just hop on to the CSS style and we'll create this page exactly how it looks in the Facebook login page. Now the first thing in the CSS styling that I'm going to be adding here is the default style that will be applied to the entire page irrespective of whether it is in the body or the head or the foot, anything. So I'll put the margin and default padding here as 0. I'll mention the font family, and the font family that we have here for Google is Helvetica, Arial, and Sans serif, which basically means that the page should firstly be preferring Helvetica. If it doesn't find that, it should be moving to Arial. If it doesn't find that either, so it will be moving to Sans serif. Now I'll put the box sizing here as border box, which we are going to be using because we are going to be putting these attributes inside flex boxes. So we'll be using border boxing for that. Now moving on to the body of the code. I'll put the background color here as the one that is used in Facebook. So the code is #F0F to F5. That is a bit off-white of color. It's not exactly white, it's not exactly gray, but a little bit off-white. So after this, I'm going to be positioning it as relative and the height as 115 viewport length, and the overflow of the x-axis will be hidden. That basically just specifies the overflowing of content in the horizontal direction. Next up, we are going to be styling the container. Now here, since we mentioned the container as an ID, so we are going to be using a hash here, or if we have it as a class, we'll write dot container here. Now the hash is for the attributes which are mentioned inside IDs, and dot is for attributes that are mentioned inside classes. Write the display here as flex. Next up, we have our recent logins. So here also I'll put the display as flex, and I'll put the flex direction as column, because we want the things to be coming one below the another, not one after the another. Just like we have these both things side by side to each other and not below each other. Now let's see the difference if I would have used row here. Now if I use row, as you can see that it has gone way over there and it has overflown in the horizontal direction. So we're going to be using the flex direction as column here. After this, we are also going to position this as a relative, and I'm going to be specifying the left edge of the page, and that will be 20 view width. And next up, we'll have the top as 13 view height. Now, what this 20 viewport width and 13 viewport height does is it distances the attributes, distances the elements from the top and the left attributes that we have mentioned right over here. So it is 20 units from the left and 13 units from the right. I'm also going to be putting a right margin here as 30 viewport width. Next up is the Facebook logo. So we have used the ID as Facebook there. Inside this, I'm going to be putting the height as 70 pixels, the width as 198 pixels, and the margin as minus 20 pixel. After this, let's move on to the recent logins again. But here we have to style the title inside the recent login. So we'll write it like this, that recent logins, and inside the recent logins, we are going to be styling the title. So I'm going to be putting the font size as 28 pixel, the font weight as normal, the line height as 32 pixel, the margin from the top as 20 pixels, and the margin from the bottom as 5 pixels. After this, let us move to the subtitle part that had the text below the recent login title. So we want to go inside the recent login ID, and we want to style the subtitle part inside that. So this is how we write this. The color that is mentioned on the official Facebook login page, the code 606770, and the font size should be 15 pixels. The line height should be 15 pixels as well, and we'll add a bottom margin here, the 20 pixels. After that, we'll put the font weight as 400. Now, when you go to this page, you can see that the logo is now properly aligned and the recent logins text has changed. And also this text right over here has become grayish in color, and it is somewhat what it looks like here on the actual page. So moving after this, we have these pictures. We have both these pictures that we have to style. And for that, we're going to be moving inside the cards. So firstly, I want the cards to have a display of flex. After this, we are going to be styling the card 1 and the card 2. So we need to do some common stylings for both the cards. So we'll add both the names here, and after that we'll put the position here as relative, the background color as white, the right margin would be set here to 10 pixels, and the border radius, which is used to curve the border, as by default we have rectangulars and square, we have tipped borders, but we do not want that. We want a slightly curved edges towards the text and towards the boxes. So we'll put a border radius here of 5 pixels, and then the right margin as 20 pixels. All right. So after that, the second thing that we see here on this is when we hover over this, it has a certain background shadow. It has a certain shadow that when you hover over it is shown here. So for that, we are going to be using card 1 hover and also card 2 hover, and we'll add box shadow here. Now we'll add 0, 8 pixels, 16 pixels, and we'll be using the RGBA attribute. So that will be 0 and 0.2. After that, we're going to be using the cursor as pointer. So when you see this here, whenever it goes to this image, whenever the cursor goes to this image, there is a small hand-like gesture that we see here as compared to what we see by default. There is a hand-like gesture that we see here, for which we have used cursor as pointer. After that, as you can see here right now, that this box is having a black grayish shadow beside it right when we hover over it, right? But here you have a little transition effect. You don't have it right at hovering over this. You have a transition effect over here. So for the same, we'll add transition, and we'll say box shadow 0.3 seconds. So it will take 0.3 seconds after the pointer is hovered over the box, when the background will be turned to slight grayish. Now let us style the card 1 and card 2 images. So card 1 image and card 2 image. Inside this, I'm going to be giving a height as 160 pixels, the width as 160 pixels as well, and the border top left radius as 5 pixels, and the border top right radius as 5 pixel as well. So it will not curve the edges on all the corners, it will just curve the edges at the top left and the top right. So as you can see here, it is much smaller than what it appeared to be previously, and when we hover over this, we get a grayish shadow behind this. So now coming to the text that is written below this, these text, this name over here and this add account text over here. So we'll do the styling for the add account bit, and I'll set the color as 66FE5, the color code blue of Facebook. After this, we're going to be styling the class that we added. That is the username class that we added common for both the cards. And since you can see here that as we are using a class, we are writing it as dot username and not hash username. Hash is used when we are styling in an ID, whereas dot is used whenever we are styling a class. So let's style this. I'll put the font size as 18 pixels, the line height as 22 pixels, padding as 12 pixel, and I'll align the text here in the center, and I'll use the RGB property for setting the color is 25, 79, and 86. After this, we are going to be styling this cancel button right over here, this X right over here that we need to be placed above this picture, and we also need it to change it. We also need it to transition whenever we are hovering over this. See, whenever you are looking at it like this, it is a transparent X, but whenever you are hovering over this, it changes to a bigger size with a solid background. So let's get into that. The ID that we used for it is cancel. I'll set the position of this to absolute. I need some left space. It's 8 pixels. The color will be white. Need some top margin as well. Will be 5 pixels. Border radius as 50%. The height as 20 pixels. And we'll also align the text here in the center. Width of 20 pixels. The background color will again use the RGB property here, and the 2 and 62. We'll also change the opacity to 0.5 because we need it to be a bit transparent. So let us look at it now. It has perfectly aligned here how we needed it, required it to be. Now let's come on to styling this hover feature, which when you hover over this, it goes to a larger size with a solid background. So for this, I'm going to be writing card 1 hover, and we need the cancel button to be acting whenever we are hovering over it. I'll set the background color to white. Opacity as 1, since we need it to be opaque and not transparent like it is right now. Whenever we are hovering over it, I'll use the RGB property for the color, and it is 194, 193, and 193. After this, we'll set the height and width as 25 pixels and the line height as 22 pixels. We'll need the top margin to be minus 5 pixels here, and the left margin to be minus 5 pixels as well. The font size would be 25 pixels, and the transition would be for 0.3 seconds as we have done earlier for the shadow of the box behind. So let us see. Now when we hover over it, it goes above the image, and since we have put a margin of minus 5 from the top of the left, So it kind of overflows from the image whenever we are hovering over it, and it also changes its background to white, and it is not transparent anymore, it is completely opaque. So this is done. After this, let's get on to designing our login button. So put the position as relative, the background color as white, for which we have like 6F over here. The height will be set as 350 pixels, the width as 400 pixels, border radius will be 5 pixels here as well. No, the border radius here will be 10 pixels. And the display is going to be flex. And then again, the flex direction that we are going to be putting here will be column type. After that, I need a top margin of 18 viewport height. That means that it should be 18 units away, 18 units distant from the top margin of this page. We'll write justify content here as flex start, which is used to align the flex items along the main axis of the current line. We'll also add a bit of a padding here as 10 pixels from the top, 10 pixels from the right, 20 pixels from the bottom, and 10 pixels from the left. After this, we are going to be aligning the items here center as well. And we'll also add a box shadow, which will be 5 pixels, 5 pixels, 3 pixels spread, and the color will be Gainsborough. After this, we are going to be styling the anchor tag that we have put inside the login ID. So we'll write hash login and anchor tag inside it. I'll add a margin here as 18 pixels. It will be 18 pixels from the top and bottom and 0 pixels from the left and right. After this, we don't need any text decoration. That means that whenever we are looking at this, we don't need other underline to come here. So we have put the text decoration as none. Now, if I remove this text decoration from here, as you can see, there's a line below this forgot password. We don't need this. So we are going to be writing text decoration as none here. After this, I'll set the font size as 15 pixels and the color code for this is 1877F2. Right, so after this, we need to put some hover attributes for this as well, this anchor tag as well. So we'll write it as hash login a hover. Now, whenever we are hovering over it, we need the text decoration to be underlined. So now, as you can see, whenever you are hovering over this, the text decoration, the line is coming beside it whenever we are hovering our pointers over it. But whenever we remove our pointers, the line is gone. Now, after this, we'll also put the cursor here as pointer so that whenever we bring our cursor over here, there is a hand-like gesture. After this, let's style the HR tag that we put there in the inline styling. We'll add a width here as 95%, similar how we did in the HTML code. And the height here will be 0.1%. We'll use the RGB property for the background color, which is 194, 193, and 193. And we don't need any border, we don't need any kind of decoration towards the border by default, so we'll put the border here as none. After this, let's get on to styling the input fields, the email ID and the password field that we have there. So for this, we need to go inside the login ID, and for the input type is equals to text. Also, we'll be designing this for the input field that has a type is equals to password. So we are doing some common styling for both of them here. We'll put the height as 35%, the margin as 8 pixel and 0, border radius as 5 pixels, left padding of 10 pixels, font size of 16 pixels, and after that we have two more things to style here, that is the width as 95% and the border as 1.5 pixels solid. The color code of the border is FF0. After this, we are going to be styling something specific that we need for the password input type. So we'll write the input type is equals to password. And inside this, we're going to give a bottom margin of 12 pixels. After this, similar to hover attribute, we also have a focus attribute. So here we will be styling that focus attribute for both the email and the password input types. We'll write here login input type is equals to text. Now, one thing that I am going to change here that I wrote wrong is that we took the input type for the email as email, not text. So we'll write here email so that the styling is applied to it accordingly. And after this, we'll write focus here. And the next styling that we need is input type is equals to password. And we'll also add focus here. Now, what we want when the focus attributes work upon this is the outline should be none. The border should be 1 pixel solid blue. I'll show in a while what this does exactly. And the box shadow here will be 005 pixels and the color code as 719 ECE. After this, I'll put the caret color attribute as blue. Now, what the caret color attribute does is it controls the color of the text insertion. So now when you see here, whenever we are clicking on this, whenever we are clicking on the email and the password tag, there seems to be a bluish border, the bluish shadow right across its borders. And that is what we did when we styled the focus part here. Now let us move over to styling the login button. So inside the login button ID, I want the background color to be of color code 1877F2. The color of the text should be white. So there are going to be 6 Fs. And the font size would be 20 pixels. The border radius should be 5 pixels and the border should be none. By default, there shouldn't be any border that is around that button. After this, I'll give the height as 120 pixels and the font weight as bold. And the last thing that we are going to be styling here is the width, and we'll set it to 95%. All right. So as you can see right now, the login button is quite similar to the login button that we have here. However, it has some hover properties. As you can see, the color, this blue color is slightly changing to a darker shade whenever we are hovering over it. And there also seems to be a pointer, cursor pointer whenever there is a hover on the login button. So let's do that. I'll write the login button hover, and I'll put the background color as color code 166FE5 and the cursor to pointer. Now let's see. Yes, whenever we are hovering over this, the color seems to be on a bit of the darker shade of blue, and also the pointer is changing to this hand gesture that we have discussed previously. Next up, let's style this create new account button. So for this, I'm going to be in the ID that I've used in the HTML code, create new account. Inside this create new account, we'll add the background color as the color code 42B728. That is a shade of green, and we want the color of the text to be white. So this. Next up is the font size, that will be 18 pixels, and the border radius as 5 pixels. For that, we don't want the border to be styled anything by default, so we'll put the border as none, and the height as 100 pixels, and the font weight here as bold. After that, we'll add the width as 60%, the top margin as 20 pixels. Now we'll create the styling for when we hover over this. So create new account, hover, and inside this we're going to be changing the background color to a color code that is 36A420, and we want the cursor to be a pointer type. So let us check this. We have got this create new account button right over here, and the hover functionalities also seem to be working fine, that when we hover over it, the color is changing to a darker shade of green, and the pointer is changing to, cursor is changing to pointer type. After this, I want to style the paragraph tag that we have put there for the one line of text. And for this, I'll put the font size as 15 pixels, the position as absolute, and the bottom margin as minus 55 pixels. So let us see this. So this is perfectly aligned over here. Now we are quite done with both these elements, the Facebook login and the profile cards over here, and this login section over here, which has the email and the password input section, the login button, and the create new account. Now all we need to do is we need to align the footer. We need to style the footer so that it comes at the bottom of this page and not over here. So let us style the footer. We'll give it a background color as white. We'll set the positioning of this to absolute, since the IDs, the cards that we have used above, the container is in a relative position. We'll put the bottom margin as 0, as we want it to be right at the bottom of the page, and there should not be any spacing between the bottom of the page and the footer. After this, the width will be 100 viewport width, and the padding will be 20 pixels. The color of the text should be a color code by the code A6, A8, AA. That is a shade of gray. The font size here would be 12 pixels. Top margin as 100 pixels. The display should be flex, and the content should be justified in the center. After that, I also want some word spacing. There should be some spacing between the words that are present in the footer. So we'll add the word spacing as 12 pixel here. And after that, the list style as 20 pixels. So that is it. We have also styled the footer. Now let's go back to our page and see what it looks like, because we are complete with the CSS styling. So as you can see right here, we have quite successfully created the login page of Facebook. Now the only problem with this is that page is not responsive. If you try to minimize it, if you try to minimize it to a certain window height and window width, it does not align with the window. Like if you go to the original Facebook site, whenever you are changing the window size, the text and the container seems to align themselves according to the size of this. Like if we have shortened the width of this window to a certain size, so these seem to appear one after the other rather than one beside the other. So for doing the same, we are going to be adding media queries in our CSS styling. And the first media query that we are going to be adding, we'll write screen here, and max width as 1114 pixels. That means that whenever the screen would be 1114 pixels or less, this media query will be applied to the elements that we are going to be adding inside this. So we'll add the recent logins here, and I'll give a left alignment of 70 pixels and a right margin of 22 viewport height width. After this, we'll be writing the login ID here, and we'll give a right margin to it of 30 pixels. There will be right spacing of 30 pixels from page. We're going to be adding another media query here, which will be max width of 900 pixels. That means that what styling will be applied when the screen is 900 pixels or less. So firstly, we're going to be styling the body, and the height will be 150 viewport height. After this, let's move on to the container. The flex direction should be column, and the item should be aligned in the center, and the content should be justified in the center as well. After that, we have the recent logins. So inside the recent logins, we're going to be giving the right margin as 0. We're going to be aligning the items at the center, and the left margin as 0 as well. The top spacing should be 20 pixels. After this, we will be moving towards card 1 that contained our profile picture, where this picture right over here, we had it inside card 1. So in card 1, I'm going to be giving a margin right of 5 pixels. After this, similarly for card 2, the margin left would be 5 pixels and the margin right would be 0. After this, there's the login section, and inside the login section, I'll give the text alignment as center, the left spacing as 0, the right margin as 0 as well, and the top margin as minus 30 pixels, and the top spacing should be 80 pixels. Right. So after this, we have the recent logins, and there will be some attributes that are going to be common for recent logins and the login. So we're going to be writing this together. We'll be setting the position to relative. Now after this, we have the footer. Inside the first footer, the position will be absolute. The padding will be of 20 pixels. The width will be of 100 viewport width. And we are done with the media query for maximum width of 900 pixels. Now both the media queries that we did above were for maximum width. Now one that we have is for maximum height as well. The last one that we have here is for maximum height. So I'll add the media query tag here, media screen, and max height as 670 pixels. Below this, I'm going to be styling the footer, and inside this, I'm going to be putting the position as relative and the top spacing as 100 pixels. So we are completed with the media queries, and we are completed with the CSS styling here as well. Now let's check to see if our page is responsive now. So see, right here, when you are minimizing the window, the email address and this input is going downwards, the profile picture and this cards, whereas whenever we were doing it earlier, it was just overflowing in the horizontal direction, and it was not coming as we expected it to be. So right now the page is responsive, and it looks similar to what we have the actual Facebook login page right over here. So that was all about it, and I hope it was clear. Thank you so much.